Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm excited to talk with an old friend of the show, fellow vegan, Jordi Casamitjana. How are you doing?
I'm very well, and how are you doing?
Well, it's good to see you after all this time. You're an excellent philosopher in a lot of ways. You're a trained zoologist. You have a background in zoology, an amazing character. Got a new book out. It's called Why Vegans Don't. A philosophical guide to vegan behavior. And so this was interesting. It's not just another vegan diet book. It's a deep dive into why behind the ethical choices that vegans make in everyday life. Is that right?
Yeah, that's very much it. So I wanted to have the word philosophical here. I'll show you the book. Here it is. So philosophical in the subtitle, just to be sure nobody got confused thinking that we're talking about food here. Because, I mean, if you just Google vegan books, most of them you'll find out about food. There are not that many about philosophy. And some that are about philosophy, they are not clear with the title whether they are about philosophy. So I just wanted to be very clear that the philosophical guide, and I use the term philosophical. I mean, philosophy has different meanings. One is the actual, with capital P, is the discipline that discusses the thoughts of humanity about existence, identity, all these bigger things. And then, that's with a smaller p, is a group of thoughts and ideas that are coherent, that you use to guide your behavior and to understand the world, and you can tell others about it. And then these are called a philosophy of this or the philosophy of that. So this is a philosophy because veganism is a philosophy. Veganism is defined as a philosophy by the Vegan Society, who created the word in 1944. The whole philosophy existed before, for millennia, but the word was created by the Vegan Society when they separated themselves from the Vegetarian Society, because they didn't like the fact that they allowed the consumption of milk and eggs, particularly milk. So this, you knew that there was kind of a group of rebels from the Vegetarian Society that didn't like the milk part, and they demand to have a page in the magazine of the Vegetarian Society about the vegetarians that didn't consume milk. And the Vegetarian Society said, no, we are not allowing you to have that. I said, really? Okay. And then they split. They met in a vegetarian restaurant in London, in Holborn, that doesn't exist anymore, although the location is still there. And a group of 5 or 6, among them Donald Watson, which is the most well-known, but he's not the only one. So the Hendersons, Dorothy Morgan, Sally Shrigley, all those that were members of the Vegetarian Society just met and said, that's outrageous, let's create a new group and let's invent a word. Vegetarian, if we cut the bit in the middle, we just have the word vegan. They discussed it for a while, which would be the right name, and then eventually they settled for vegan. So that was in 1940. They were already vegans. And then, of course, that they needed to define the whole thing, and it took them decades to finalize it. They started immediately, but it took them until 1988 to find an official definition of veganism that hasn't changed since. And it starts saying veganism is a philosophy and a way of living that seeks to exclude, as far as practicable and possible, all forms of animal exploitation and cruelty. And it continues a couple of more sentences, but it starts straight away, is a philosophy. So it's something that you become a vegan and you have a philosophical thought. Say me, I would base my life on that. So people forget about this, because many people started saying, oh, I am vegan, and they only meant that they were eating vegan food on their diet. So that was, from the 80s, very early, people started to use the adjective ethical before vegan, saying an ethical vegan meaning a proper vegan, a real vegan, the ones that follow the definition, to prevent them to be confused by those that only use the word but didn't follow the definition. So that's the term ethical vegan, which I used often, and only means real vegan, a proper vegan that follows the definition. Because all this dilution of the concept is important to keep reminding people, yeah, it's a philosophy, it's a philosophy. So my book is very much about, let's go into the philosophical part, because I published another book that you remember, we discussed it before, Ethical Vegan, A Personal and Political Journey to Change the World. That was in 2020. And from that book, I developed some ideas, and I talk about the history and the philosophy. And I decided, well, I need to go deeper into the philosophy. So I need another book that go far deeper, deconstruct the philosophy in more detail, so for people can understand it better, and then see how you apply it. And that's this book. The title says Why Vegans Don't, because we are basically defined based on what we don't do as opposed to what we do, what we reject, what we don't do. So we are, as a philosophy, we're quite free. We are allowed to do whatever we want to do, but the only rules are the things that we are not allowed to do. So basically, the definition clearly says that we try to exclude things, exclude the exploitation of animals, exclude the cruelty of animals. It's all about not doing something. Hence this hand here in this hand, which is the Himsa hand. If people follow the Jain religion, they know that there's a hand like that in the Jains. That means Ahimsa, this concept means do no harm or non-violence, very old, millennial. So I use the image of Ahimsa. I replace the symbols they have in the middle with this heart and V to symbolize that veganism has also Ahimsa in its heart. And the hand means stop. Don't do this, don't do that. So but the point is why? Why are we saying don't do this, don't do that? So that's the book about. I explain the why. I explain the why. The what, the definition gives you the what, but you need an explanation about the why. So you need to deconstruct it in axioms and principles. And then I apply it to each of the things that we reject. So each of the chapters is one of the things we reject. Honey, leather, milk, eggs, horse riding, bees in zoos. So each of those, then I explain all the reasons we use to reject them or not to participate in them. So each of the chapters will work as an independent thing. You can read them in any order. If you're interested in why reject X first, well, you can read that one. But the first chapters at the beginning tells you the foundations of the philosophy, and then you can see how we apply it to each of the things you reject. So it gives you the complete picture in more detail and more reference than my previous book. So as a guide, so if you started being vegan or you're vegan for a long time, but you still have questions and doubts or some gray areas that you haven't decided which direction to go, well, I'll give you a direction to go. So that's in a nutshell.
I love it. And so do you find that there are people that miss this distinction that veganism is a philosophy, it isn't just a diet, and that they mix the two up and say, well, I eat honey, and so, but I don't care about animals, but I am eating a vegan diet. Do you find that this problematic saying it like this?
Well, it's only problematic if you use the word vegan, because obviously people can do whatever they want to do. But if they use words that mean something different, then confusion will arrive. So the problem is more for the people observing, the general public. If you say, look, I have a very peculiar diet. I only eat animals that have 20 centimeters tall, and they make a sound like this, pep, and I'm going to call this the real vegetarian diet. Fine, you can create whatever word you want to describe whatever idiosyncratic style in your diet. But if you're going to use a word that already exists, then you need to follow what that definition is. So if you say, well, I'm going to call it veganism, you can say, hold on. You already exist. We created that in 1944. Please find another one. If they insist, no, I like this one, I want to steal that word from you, then is when we have the right to, no, we don't want you to do that. And there's people that they say they are vegan and they only mean they have a vegan diet. Some people call them dietary vegans, fine. That's why we use the ethical vegan term to be sure to differentiate us from everybody else. Oh, you're back.
Yeah. So they, and then these are people that they follow a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, but they don't like the word vegan, and they call themselves plant-based people or plant-based. That's fine. So if you're only going to do the diet, it's fine that you use another term. But I find it I don't like it, plant-based, because it doesn't mean plant-based. They also eat fungus that are not plants. They also eat algae that are not plants. So it's very incomplete and complicated, and they kind of use it as a verb. So it's up to them. But at least they don't misuse the term vegan, which is the key thing. And this is true that the mushrooms are actually more closely related to animals than plants.
Well, yes, but only, it means when we say closely related, it's a meaningless statement unless you know how closely related you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because we're so far from plants, having another group a little bit closer doesn't mean we are really that close. It's just a little bit closer rather than 1 million miles, 1 million minus 1 meter mile. So yeah, they're a little bit closer because they don't have chlorophyll. They cannot obtain energy from the sun. They cannot do photosynthesis like plants do. And we are the same. We cannot do that. We have that in common. So there was a group of organisms that could not produce energy from the sun, and from them, fungus on one side appear, and then the rest that led to all the animals appear. So they are closely related, but they are still very far.
Very different.
Yeah, and far, relatively speaking, because all life is connected in the planet. So we all carbon-based life based on the same genetic system. So we all really brothers and sisters. If you look at it from that point of view, every single living organism in this planet is related, much closer related than any other living organism in any other planet, in any other galaxy, in any other part of the universe. So we are really brothers and sisters, Earthlings. I like this word. But within the Earthlings, the family is very diverse. And we have the plants, the algae, the bacteria, and within the animals, we have vertebrates, invertebrates, a whole sort of divisions. And we're just one of them. We're just not different than anybody else, just another species of ape, which is another group of primates, which is another group of mammals, which is another group of vertebrates, which is another group of animals.
Brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I like it. I like looking at it this way rather than cousins. It makes you more respectful, I think, if you see everyone as a brother and sister. So.
You know what I like? I like shipmates.
Oh, yeah, I like it too. Although, because, we're all in this ship together and we don't know where it's going to end.
Floating out there.
In the cosmos, but it does seem that we're not going to go anywhere else. So the idea of a ship is always you hoping to arrive to your destination, but we are kind of floating in a place we haven't seen anybody else around. So the chances is that we'll disappear from the ship before the ship has arrived or get closer to anybody else's, so we can have a conversation or the prospect to even jump ship and move to another ship, so another planet.
Yeah. Is that on the docket? Do you think that we will, as a species, either become intergalactic or die?
Well, all species have exactly the same destiny. So anywhere in the world, they either appear and then disappear, or they move and go somewhere else. But it's the destiny of everything. I mean, but we are the universe is so big that we are so unlikely to still exist when we are closer to anybody else that are in the same position than us to communicate with each other and have intelligence like us. That is the chances is that there must be life somewhere else, but they're so far that we'll never get remotely even able to communicate. And because we come and go, because we evolve and disappear, to communicate with another life form, you have to be evolving at the exact same time, because they might just be extinct by the time we find out where they live, and the other way around. So the coincidence of both existing at the same time, that makes the chances much remote. So we don't have to worry about it. There's plenty of us in this planet to talk about, to discuss. We're still exploiting everyone, thinking they are not alive. So we're missing so much by treating them as objects. We don't know who they are, what they do. If we didn't treat them as objects, that we will discover so many more civilizations, all of them in this planet. So.
Yeah. So in your book, you actually are uncovering these behaviors and stuff. So how did you choose which behaviors to focus on? I mean, and how did you unite them under this kind of philosophical framework?
Well, it all started really from my reaction when I started to see people claiming that they were vegans and they're not following the definition for one way or another. For instance, people saying, I'm vegan, but I eat some animals. What do you mean you eat some animals? Yes, the animals that I don't think they are sentient beings, like oysters or mussels, and then I would interject. They say, well, they are sentient beings. You might not think you're sentient beings. I'm a zoologist. I know all these things. I know the difference between sentient and not. They are sentient beings. And people say, no, we don't care. When I started seeing things like that, people started to dilute the concept of veganism and start to add new things. I thought, well, I need to go back and look at these particular issues. So I wanted to talk about eating mussels that is not vegan. I wanted to talk about eating backyard eggs that is not vegan. And I wanted to express why I think it's not vegan when others might disagree. And then, so that's how I started. I started with the issues of contention, the ones that I saw people disagreeing or debate still within the vegan movement. And I had a very strong opinion for each of those. And I wanted to produce that opinion with evidence and my reasoning from a philosophical but also evidential point of view and from my zoological point of view, scientific.
Yeah.
And then that's how it started. And then when I got a few of those, they become articles which I publish. I become a writer, full-time writer now for freelance for clients that are animal protectionists or vegan organizations. So I've been writing articles about these things separately. And that's at one point I said, well, I should get some of these articles together and make a book from them, and then add a few more until I cover the entire spectrum of the kind of things that we say no to. So when I had covered all these in articles, then I wrote a few more about why we don't consume meat, and until I had a complete picture, and that's what this book is about. So it started with me having debates about issues with vegans, and then these generated articles, which then they generated a book. So.
Controversial at first because you found something that was talked about that people still are arguing about, especially with oysters. I mean, people don't know this. How you get pearls is actually by agitating and torturing poor defenseless little clams. And we take this for granted, and we always, I don't know if you agree with this statement, but it seems like we always assume that animals are stupid instead of assuming maybe they're smarter than they are. We always assume that they're stupider than we are and don't give them any credit for having a possible consciousness.
Absolutely. That has been our major mistake over the centuries. And it's a consequence of the supremacy societies we created. We think we are superior. Everybody is stupid. Initially, it was just even a race. I'm the clever race. All the other races are stupid. And then, okay, well, let's accept that all humans are okay. But then all the primates, there's always somebody saying, we are the cleverest and everybody else is stupid. They change what they mean by everybody else through history, but still this supremacy tendency is there. That's what veganism is fighting against. So we want to eliminate these supremacist ideas that are polluting the minds of society. And the vegan world of the future is a world where there is no such supremacy, and therefore there will not be oppression or exploitation of anyone because everybody will be treated right. This utopic dream that we all want to fight for. But it starts with fighting this idea. And when people say they're superior, they either look at everybody as dangerous or they look at everybody as inferior, as stupid. And when they look at any animal, they make that general assumption that, yeah, if you're not a human, if you cannot have a computer or choose which is the best cheese in the northwest of America, you are not a sentient being. So it's the opposite. Our default position should be that every time that we see something that moves a little bit, that seems to be an animal, we should assume is a sentient being. There must be a sentient being. Why would not be a sentient being if that option came to us through evolution? It might come to them through evolution too. And if it's a useful thing to be sentient in this planet, so you can react to the world, you can move away from bad things, you can get closer to good things, that's what sentience is about. It's a very simple thing. It's just the ability to have experiences that are either positive, negative, or neutral, so you can make a judgment how to deal with the situations that happen around you. And that means you need to have few things. You need to have senses so you can capture the information around you. You need to have a nervous system that allows you to process this information. And once you have these two, then you need to be able to react to it. That means either move or close your shell or do something. Now, plants don't have a nervous system. Plants can't move anywhere. So it's no point for them to be sentient if they cannot do anything about bad things around them. But we animals evolve the ability to move. That means automatically it would make sense to get sentience. Imagine that you have an engine and you haven't put a tank of petrol yet. You have an empty engine, they kind of go, hey, all the pieces are there, but it still is there because you haven't put the energy to move that engine. That's the same thing. An animal that can move requires a sentience to decide what to do with that ability to move. So it's almost logical to conclude that any animal will be sentient. And if you lose sentience, somehow that should be such a rare phenomenon. And you need a lot of research to try to explain why if you lost sentience. And bivalves, which is the group of mollusks like the oysters or the mussels, because they live, they're sedentary, they don't move as an organism. People have assumed, okay, they lost sentience, but they do move. When you ask zoologists, you learn the actual move. They might move very slowly, some of them. Sometimes they move quite quickly. So the scallops really move really quickly when they're endangered. And they close and they open the shells. That's movement. That is reacting to the wall. If it's a bad wall out there, you close the shell. That means that animal has made a conclusion from something that was happening. How he made a conclusion? It must have a nervous system. Let's go and have a look. Yeah, they do. They might not have a big brain like us, but they do have a nervous system. So they have anything that requires for anyone to be considered sentient being. But even if we didn't know anybody about a new species was discovered, we should assume this. And this is one of the principles of veganism. When I talk in my book about the principles, I call it the axioms, the 5 axioms. The second one is all members of the animal kingdom should be considered sentient beings. So this is a belief that is universal against vegans. So when you don't believe in that anymore and you say, I'm going to eat that one because I don't consider that one sentient being, you are departing yourself from veganism. You stop being a vegan when you decided to make that exception. So that's one example of what are the chapters I write in my book about the mollusks. And of course, I argue it also from an evolutionary point of view, because mollusks like bivalves, they are from the same family of mollusks like the octopuses or the snails. They're all from the old mollusks. And the all others are considered sentient beings by most people. So why the bivalves not? When you know about the evolution, they all evolved from a single type of mollusk that was sentient. So we know that they had sentience before. Why would they lose it? It's so useful to have sentience, but losing it makes no sense. So there's many reasons why I'm so convinced that they are sentient.
Yeah. And these are assumptions that you see bleed over into all the decisions that humans make, whether it's tribalistic, ethno-nationalism, or whatever. We have in-group, out-group mentality in everything, and we justify exploiting others at all costs, and it becomes institutionalized, and we think we're fancy, but we're actually very far away from living ethical lives. There's other contentious points that vegans are on the border about, zoos or horse riding or honey and stuff like this. Are there any other that stand out that are highly contentious?
All of those that you mentioned are debated within the movement, and I give my reasons why I have a position on those. But the most contentious of all, and I say contentious of all in the sense that it will be so contentious that many people won't even be surprised that I included this, including you, I would imagine, because I'm a minority in that one. So my opinion on that one is not the opinion of the majority of vegans, but still I have a strong opinion, which is cultivated meat. Cultivated meat is something that many vegans are excited about, and I'm the opposite. I think it's a very bad thing, and I'm 100% opposed to it.
I'm against that. And I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say dog ownership, and I was going to say, well, yeah, but no, I'm against.
I don't know. I assume it might be. I find myself a minority every time that I'm in a group of vegans talking about these issues. They always, many of them, they say they would never taste it, they would never eat it, but they think it's a good thing, and they argue. Well, in my book, I collected 25 different reasons to oppose it. So I make a big case about why each of those would be enough to oppose it. But I collected 25. But in essence, I think the most important one, the one that many people don't notice, is that we don't maintain the idea that meat is food. So we still, with the idea that we need to produce cultivated meat to feed people, instead of vegan food is already decided that we lost this battle and we've won. Accept the meat will only food available, so we will need to make soya look like minced food and vegetables done. That is the argument of the right. We should be the ones championing the plants as food and going against the concept of meat, because the meat is just more than just what people eat. It has a concept linked to patriarchy, linked to masculinity, sexism. It's a cultural thing about meat that has is intrinsically linked to the supremacist idea. So if we want to eliminate that supremacist society, we need to eliminate the concept of meat. And the last thing we want to do is to find vegan versions of meat, so the meat survive, the concepts survive, and the shapes survive, and the smells survive. And so we need to reach to that point. And that's easy to understand when you know that it actually had happened. Humanity did reach this point. So I'm not just imagining this. The point, we need to reach the point that when people mention the word meat, you just feel so revolted with the idea of the word. So we need to feel an automatically a kind of visceral reaction against the idea that once somebody ate another animal, or once somebody make a burger from another animal or sausage, and then other people kept eating it and don't even remember what the animal came from. Now that has happened already. So if you talk to in any social group anywhere in the world about the idea of eating another human being, immediately people have a visceral reaction against it. And yet eating humans were quite common in our history. So how it happened? Something that was common is become automatically rejected, universally by all cultures. Well, that's what we need to get. We need to replicate that feeling, but with meat and any concept associated with meat. So it doesn't help if we just create meat substitutes that look like meat. That what it does is perpetuates the concept, makes it last. Of course, in the vegan world, that would not exist. But I think what it happens is that this fake meat fashion, and that include cultivated, but also include trying to replicate 100% the shapes and colors of meat, to the point that you can't tell the difference. So if you cannot tell the difference, something is bad, that should be bad too. So the replication of something that is horrible, that looks exactly the same than what it was, is still a horrible thing. So for me, when I see somebody eating a bit of an animal in a burger, that I cannot tell whether it's cultivated, is fake, or is real, I still see a horrible thing. I still see somebody horrible, doing something horrible.
Yeah,
you understand the point.
This is the driving point. Yeah, it's like a rape movie. Nobody wants to see a rape, and nobody wants to see a movie about a rape. So it's just bad all around. The funniest part is that we have legumes, which are the answer to all of our problems. They fix nitrogen in the soil. They are an incredible source of protein. And the grains and legumes that we're feeding to the animals, we're actually losing calories, losing protein. Only to turn around and eat the meat and get cardiovascular disease and other diseases it is one of the great, I don't know what happened. Or what point of evolution?
One of the great injustice of the world, what you just described. You're right. And yet we don't promote as a vegan community these days. I mean, it will happen, but these days we are still in that crisis where we don't promote legumes as we should. We should be the champions of legumes and say, any dish that we eat should have legumes in it. And of course, what we're doing is we change the legume, we're making it to soy, and we're making it to potato, and then we're making it to burger. And then people don't associate the burger with the soya or the legume. They still associate it with the meat. So then there hasn't been any education there. People still think that it has to be looking like a bit of an animal to it. Well, we should just be promoting the beans as they look like, exactly as they look like. So the vegetables that they look like, people recognize them, people can plant it at home, people can experience, they don't need to buy a patented, something that has been created in a lab that maybe look like that. So one of the problems that of social injustice and food injustice is the fact that people still need to buy food. I think this is something that we take for granted. But I mean, look, I live in the UK. We don't pay for healthcare. So progress should always lead to a situation where you don't pay for healthcare. Well, progress also should continue, and you should not pay for food. Food should be something available to everyone for free. You should be able to grow your food. You should be able to learn how to do it. You should be able to have land to grow it. Nobody should be able to get rich for that. We should interchange. I grow this, you grow that. I'll give you a potato, you give me a tomato. And everybody could really do it because it's quite available. You just need land and the technology to do it. I mean, agricultural technology exists, so you can grow things in places that are hard to grow if you have a greenhouse or something. So this should be the way the society should be advancing, to teach each other and to learn each other how to plan stuff and to eat stuff with a minimum process and a minimal trouble. And that will solve so many things: the land problem, the lack of water problem, the crisis of obesity and cardiovascular diseases. All these big major crises would be solved with legumes, as you just said. If we had a legume-centric society as opposed to a burger-centric society, what a world we would enjoy.
What a world we live in. What about some of there are real concerns. What I'm just seeing, and the land that you'd free up, there's no question about it. But the people who say, non-food, non-animal products can also be harmful, in some way, which I don't get these arguments myself, but have you heard people say, the vegan food, you can't do, you run over the mouse in the field or something, like they say that.
Well, yes. And I would say we should not hide from that criticism. It's a good criticism, because as vegans, we want to stop doing harm. Anybody that says, "Oh, you haven't noticed you harming this," I want to know. I want people to tell me, so I want to check whether I can correct my behavior. And we can. It's true. There's death in crops that could be avoided. So it should be the obligation of vegans try to move us away from any of the crop systems that causes a lot of damage. It's doable. We know how to do it. For instance, what causes most death in crops than anything else? Pesticides. Pesticides are designed to kill. That is a substance that you put it there, so you kill trillions of animals so you can plant something that otherwise those animals would eat that thing you're planting. So, well, should we eliminate pesticides? Is that a crazy thing to do? It already happened. It's called organic farming. Organic farming reduces the amount of pesticides. We already know that we can do organic farming with less pesticides. But hold on, there's still things happen in organic farming. They still use some pesticides, and they still use manure from animal agriculture. Don't worry, we already have something for that. It's called veganic farming. Veganic farming is a type of organic farming that doesn't use manure, doesn't use pesticides at all, and it works. So we know now that we can grow plants without using pesticides and manure. Of course, that might not be the end of it. They might say, okay, but when we harvest it, we might kill accidentally some animal. Okay, let's use robots or AI or something that reduces that. Let's progress on that. Or let's go and develop some of the plants vertically in a vertical farming situation that is enclosed, so there is no mice and things coming in. It's all enclosed. Yeah. There are solutions of all the problems. So we should not just say, "Oh, it's plants, it's food." No, some plants might cause death. Some plants might be poisonous. It's not any plant works. So we need to know which ones are edible, which ones are not, how to process the ones we need to process to eliminate all the negative things. We know already of this. So the vegan world is possible right now because the solutions to all these problems are already here. We're just not scaled enough. But if subsidies came to veganic farming from all the subsidies that are currently in animal agriculture, then we could develop veganic farming at a huge scale. Now it's so tiny, but it would be at such a huge scale, and that automatically will solve so many problems. So the solution is
I think we'll head that way. And for the record, I think that the animals that are in the field, generally when they hear the 300,000 ton like tractor coming that's really loud, generally they run away. That's what I read.
And it's true. And it is true. And I can confirm that in the sense that it makes total sense. They're not stupid, that we were talking about before. Animals are not stupid, know what danger is. And many, I will go underground, they will move. So, and there's been research that in case of mammals, particularly mice, that is proven that that is the case. So,
Yeah, and they would learn to live, in their habitat. They know what to do in that case. But again, I'm not surprised. But the thing is, practicality, I think, is something that is overlooked in a lot of vegan folks and in a lot of big portion of the vegan movement. That practicality or pragmatism is hard to do because there's such a hysteria and an emotional attachment to the cause that some people fail to see these kind of very simple things. Do you find that to be true?
Yes, but practicality and pragmatism, I feel they are very different things, although people use them as synonymous. Practicality is an inevitable thing that you have to apply in real life. You have theories about things, and then real life is a little bit different than the theory and the models you created, and then you modify it to make it practical, to adapt it to the ins and outs of real life and problems that you didn't know. Pragmatism is a bit more intellectualized, and it's almost like thinking the problems that you might encounter beforehand and changing your method in order to see whether you can prevent them beforehand as opposed to while you're trying to do something. And this is also a good thing to do, looking ahead, trying to see the things that might not work, but it can backfire. And it backfires when I call it becomes ideological pragmatism. And ideological pragmatism, I think, is one of the major threats of the vegan movement at the moment, at this particular moment. Because ideological pragmatism is this idea that we're never going to win our fights. We're never going to achieve our goals. So we better surrender right now and compromise with the other side as a matter of technique, as a matter of my method. My method is, if I want to achieve this thing, I will settle with 50% of it from the start without even trying to achieve what I want to achieve. So ideological pragmatism is already tells you, you're going to lose, you better ask for less. And of course, for the vegan movement that we want to change the world is a threat because it tells us, you're not going to achieve the vegan world, so you better ask for less. So let's ask for vegetarianism or flexitarianism or reducitarianism as opposed to stop the consumption of animals. It's basically saying you're losing, people will always harm animals, so you don't have anything to win. So that's the problem, because then rather than animal rights, ideological pragmatism push you towards animal welfare, which is just reform, changing exploitation as opposed to stopping it. Rather than stopping harm, pragmatism tells you about reducing harm, even if you don't stop it. So it basically dilutes the entire thing because you assume you're going to lose. You assume you cannot achieve the vegan goal. And for us, people like me, we want that vegan goal. We want to fight for it. And therefore, if I want to achieve 100% of that goal, I will fight for 150% of it. Because I know it's going to be practical problems that will make me not to achieve what exactly I wanted to achieve. But that means I'm aiming for more and aiming for higher so I can reach what I will reach. I'm not going to start just aiming for 50% of it, as the pragmatist asked me to, because I'm already losing. I'm already accepting I can achieve that. And I think that's happening a lot. And the vegan movement, and part of my books are inspired by me talking to young vegans, saying, look, don't give up, you're young vegan, we can fight for this, we can achieve the vegan goal. Don't become a reducitarian, utilitarian animal welfare. You can be a vegan animal rights person like me and build a vegan world like me. And we might take generations, you might not see yourself, but we need your work and your contribution. Because if we don't start fighting for it, we will never get it. So that's why pragmatism and practicality is a slightly different thing in my view.
In this case, absolutely, because of when you said ideologically, this is a big issue with everybody. I mean, also that's a cynical trait. People are really upset that at the world that they see, and this is also how fascism wins: is the apathy that comes over you after you decide that you can't do anything about it. The hippies in the 60s were famously killed off and then turned into more narcissistic, consumerist-driven movements, and it was like a coping mechanism for having lost a great battle. But the spirit of that and various other kind of liberation spirit, if you feel that spirit, still exist, but you have to be radical. But the thing is, what you're advocating for is, I think most of them see it as so far away, that when something's so far away, if you're steadfast in your getting there far away, you're radical. You're
Yeah. Yeah, that's what they say. But I think nothing good came in this planet without the radicals. The radicals are the ones we shake the systems, we progress, the move from to better things. So, and all of them, or most of them, they never saw the fruit of their labor. And because the progress, the achievement happened generations after them. So the majority of things that can happen that are positive, they are built on the shoulders of others who fought and never saw the end result, who were on the shoulders of others who fought never. And that's how you build change. It's a gradual thing. We have very short lives, humans. So, and big transformations in societies, they take generations. Nothing happens quick. And if it does happen quick, it will go back quick as well. So nothing that lasts happens quick. Things that happen quick might revert to the original form also as quick as they happen, because when you change society, it's not just changing infrastructure or rules, or you need to change mentalities, and that takes generations. People have to be born in a world where the narrative is different than the previous generation, and they have to grow and teach their children about that world, so they are not falling back in the 2 generation, 3. So it's a generational thing. That means for anybody that fights any cause that is worthwhile, they should always assume, I'm not going to see it with my eyes. I'm just 1 generation or 2 behind the ones that will see it. Yeah. I actually think that the vegan world would happen. I'm convinced it will happen, but I think it probably is 5 generations. We need to wait for chances. But that doesn't mean that we just give up. Because the 2nd generation will be able to achieve. If we don't do anything this generation, then it's going to take 6 generations. If the second doesn't do anything, then it's going to take 7 generations. So each generation needs the work of the previous one. And we need to do our bit. So even if we're not going to say it.
There are something like 25%. Once you get 25% of the country doing it or something, or people doing it, then the rest will follow suit. And when policies are enacted and it becomes clear that vegans are better and live longer and, all that good stuff, then people will come around. But it's going to be... We still only, if we are optimistic, only 5% now at the moment. So in the most optimistic of all. Therefore, we have 20% more to grow. Yeah. So we have time. I'm not too worried about it. We have so many other existential problems, but I think it should be moving faster, and I am disappointed that it isn't moving faster. But the pragmatists really just want to see change in their time. But there is a famous quote that is paraphrased like, a real man is the man who plants trees for shade that he'll never get to enjoy.
Right. You're correct. Exactly right. Yeah. That's it. And also, the pragmatists often say, look, if you look at all the achievements and this slavery, whatever they want to say, in social advances, the pragmatists were there. So they always say, historically, you can tell how the pragmatists were there. And they say, and that's why we achieved what we achieved. And I always turned the coin around. I said, that's why it took so long to achieve what we achieved. Had not then been there, we would have achieved it sooner. They are the ones that double or triple the number of generations that everything takes to happen. So it's a spontaneous thing that happens. Any movement, especially a left-wing movement or progressive movement, always gets pragmatists because we are more tolerant of diversion of opinions. So we allow the pragmatists to come and have a say. And the pragmatists are quite easy to convince people because they ask for very little. They don't ask for sacrifice or fight. They pretend to give you a lot. And they ask a little bit in return, so they're persuasive. And we let them if they say, and then many people fall for them, and then it takes a couple more generations before we achieve it. So that's the nature of being a progressive movement. That's something we can avoid. But what it means is when we see them, we need to point the attention to everyone. Hey, this thing you hear, this is called ideological pragmatism, by the way. So don't fall too easily. It sounds nice, but look at it in more detail and think about what you're fighting for, because if you might be seduced by the shiny arguments that are shiny but empty. So just go back to basis of what we're fighting for. And that's what I'm trying to do a little bit now. So
And one of the, even beyond these individuals and stuff and their opinions and stuff, what really moves mountains is in our economic system is capital. And that's been one of the biggest, even the vegan junk food companies have been instrumental in, getting human beings closer to where we want to be, but nevertheless doing it with consumerism and junk food and strange meat-like substances that are actually made of God knows what, cellulose and stuff. But I'm hoping that we can also achieve battling what we're up against now, which this is what I want to ask you before we go, because you grew up in a fascist country, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is happening now, and is there any parallels to what you experienced growing up, happening all over the Western world?
Good question. I mean, I grew up in Catalonia when I was in the 60s, and Catalonia always been trying to become independent from Spain, and Spain always been invading us, and we always been losing. But when I grew up, that was one of the worst times, because the Spaniards that conquered Catalonia again were a fascist regime at the time. The General Franco, Mussolini, and Hitler were the three classic fascists of that era. Because Franco didn't join the Second World War, he survived the Second World War and had a regime of 40 years of dictatorship, classic fascist dictatorship. And I grew up the first 12 years of my life, his last 12 years. So I lived in a fascist regime. Many few people alive can say that, in a classic fascist regime. But what I can say now, there will be many more people that will be able to say that, because I can see fascism back. And when I look at the US, it reminds me so much of the kind of things I experienced as a child. So it might sound easy to say this is fascistic, not, because the word has changed its meaning. It becomes more, it might mean that this is authoritarian, that might mean this is far right, it might mean many things. Fascism is a type of authoritarian far right. It's not the only type, it's a type. When I lived it, I experienced it directly. So what I see things happening in many countries is, yeah, I can see that type. It has the elements I remember very well, and it started in similar ways. So, and it comes from the similar problems, and it uses the similar arguments, and persuades the similar type of people. So many parallels I can see. But this is a good thing. Franco died. That's the best thing. He perhaps died of an old age, but he did die. All fascists died. All of them. None live a lot, especially the carnies, because cardiovascular diseases and other things, they will even die sooner than others. So, and regimes changes. So you might fall into a fascist regime now, but that fascist regime will collapse, and then will go back. So there is hope as long as you remain alive as the opposition of it. Your movement remains alive underground, whatever. Catalonia culture was oppressed for 40 years, and yet we survived. And I remember I was learning Catalan songs that were illegal to play the guitar in Catalan songs, but we had somebody in the window looking. We were learning the songs, and if somebody saw somebody walking, we had to switch the song from to Catalan to Spanish, because it could be an informer. So every time I went to place, new place, a club, a church, the first thing you ask is, who is he? And the question means, who is the informer? And they will point to that guy, and then you will know what you needed to do. You couldn't speak out. You learn how to survive in that situation, and you prevail. So yes, things are a bad time at the moment, but that will last. It will not last. That will fall as everything. And the next wave of progressive humanity might be more progressive than any of the previous ones, and we might then accelerate towards the vegan world. And my hope is, I'm building this idea of the vegan world because I think that will be one of the best ideas for a new progressive humanity, when they have a complete, well-formed philosophy from which they can develop policies that actually solve the problems for everyone. So this is a valuable thing to promote. So yeah, we want to write books, we want to put memes, we want to use of that. So even if we have to read them at night in the underground, the message is passed generation to generation until the moment the world is ready to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, and act like a drop of water on a stone. Just consistently every day, wake up and be resistant towards everything that is bad, evil, and is hurting living creatures. That's, I think, an overarching easy thing. You taught me Himsa. Harm no one. Seems vaguely useful and a good philosophy for anybody of any background.
Absolutely. Himsa is the word that, what I like of it is that it's not new. It kind of is the perfect way to show people that veganism is not a fashion or fad or new stuff, because it's what the main principle, the main axiom of the philosophy of veganism is what I call the axiom of Himsa, which means trying not to harm anyone is the moral baseline, the minimum that you should do. Try it. You might not achieve it, but at least you try. So if you apply Ahimsa, and Ahimsa has become the tenet of veganism now, but it's also the tenet of Buddhism, it's also the tenet of Jainism, so we're talking a very ancient concept. So that means it's not a new thing we're talking about here. It's an old thing humanity has been pushing for. And before, I also think it's biological. I think today happened to me. I had an experience of Ahimsa today with a non-human. I was walking in the park an hour ago, 2 hours ago. I said, I'm going to relax, walk from the park because it's not raining anymore. And suddenly there was a fox coming in my direction in the same path. And I actually took a photo. So if you go to my Facebook page, you'll see what I'm just telling you now, because I took a photo. And the fox came to me, and I look at the fox, and the fox look at me. And we walk, we never change direction. We walk one close to the other, and we look at each other, and then I move a little bit to the left, he moves a little bit to the right, we look at each other, and I respect him, and he respects me. We experience intra-specific Ahimsa. He said, I better don't harm this human. I said, I better don't harm this fox. And we all move our way. And I was nobody taught that fox that was better not to harm him than otherwise. He knew already. Ahimsa is biological. We've been forgotten. We've been hiding this instinct into falsehood of superiority because caused by society and religion and everything else that make us look away from nature and inside us everywhere gods. But when we abandon that, and we look at reality, and we share our life with the fox in the same way the fox shares the life with me, then it's so obvious that do no harm is the way forward. And that's called Himsa. Yeah. And we call all the things around him in the modern society, we call this veganism.
Yeah. The people that are driven by fear, I think mostly, are then duped into this idea that they need to expel the energy to fight or kill or hurt someone else because I'm either scared or I think I need to or stuff, when in reality, most animals, humans, not counting humans, but most animals don't do it unless they absolutely have to. And they already are one step ahead of us in the fact that they don't like to kill and hurt and bully people for a cheap laugh like humans do.
Exactly. We can learn so much from them. Just any species. I mean, even predators. You can see that they don't do it because sadistic reasons. They don't kill for no reasons. They only do it when they need to feed, and they do it fast. So you can see how evolution has managed to create a complex ecosystems with a level of harmony that is so different than the way we have built the worlds around us. That they don't have that level of harmony, they don't have that level of respect. And nature and animals are good inspiration to tell us which direction should we go in. So that's why I love going to the park and look at the fox.
Yeah, I'm a big animal fan myself. Here is my book. Let's lift your book up. An Animal's History of Humanity. There's mine. Where's yours?
Here, and the other two books.
There you go.
Yes.
Beautiful. Pick up a book, people. My friend Jordi Casamitjana, anything you want to say before we go?
Well, if somebody wants to get my book, lulu.com is the best place to get it right now. You can get it from anywhere. You can order it from any bookshop, but lulu.com probably is going to be the faster. And Ethical Vegan might be also an interesting book. And books are a good way to go, because when you sit and you read a book, as opposed to look at a screen and surf, you decided to dedicate some time to think about something and to learn about something, and that puts your brain in a better open way, that you're more likely to be reached and to understand the problems when you invested some time. So if you never read a book about veganism or animals, do it. You'll grow as a person.
I recommend that any non-vegans listening, just give it a try. Give it a whirl. It's not that bad. I thought Possible turned out to be the best thing I ever did. But you don't know until you go. All right, folks. Well, stick around. I'll talk to you after this, and we'll say bye to everybody out there. Bye, guys.
Bye.